Welcome back. Before the season started, the conversation piece was out there again of, all right, so Detroit, Ottawa, and Buffalo. They've been rebuilding for a while. One of them has to break through. Which one's going to break through? And conventional wisdom seemed to be Ottawa was best situated to break through. It looked like they'd fixed their goaltending issues. Their defense should be better, right? And so far, the results have not been fantastic. Now, the interesting part is their 8-9-1 record after 18 games is actually the best record they've had in recent history. Not by much. Last year they started 8-10. The previous year 6-11-1, and 2021-2022 they started the season 4-13-1. So it's better, but again, at this rate they'll make the playoffs about 2065, and so it's not working. And the thing with Ottawa that's frustrating this season is there are games they've lost they should have won. There are games where they come out with no points where they should have at least had a point, mostly on the road, but it's starting to seemingly get worse. And this is where things are always interesting to me with sports. I was going to say with hockey, but I know it happens in other sports too. You have teams that play well and they lose. And they continue to play well. They play well, and then eventually something happens. I'm not going to say they give up, but when you look at that game last night against Edmonton, they weren't that engaged. Edmonton is a better team than Ottawa. I get that, but there wasn't really that fight back you're looking for. So November has been the month that's been a problem, and we've talked about this, but I wanted to highlight it a bit. So in reverse order of this, back in 2021-2022, they were 1-10-1 in the month of November. 2022-2023, they were 4-9-1 in the month of November. Last season, they were 4-5 in the month of November, and so far this month, 3-5-1. So they have not had a winning record in November. This has been the problem. So then later in the season, when they have that run that gets them above 500 and gets them maybe within striking distance of a playoff spot, which happened a couple years back, it gives you this hope that the following season's going to be different. And for the Ottawa Senators this year, it just hasn't been. But the interesting part is, generally the numbers have been better. So we'll start with these players being arranged in order of finish last year in scoring. Brady Tkachuk led them in scoring last year, 81 games, 37 goals, 37 assists, 74 points. Generally, he's been good. This year, 18 games, 9 goals, 11 assists, 20 points. Brady Tkachuk, the captain, and I've raised the question of, maybe he wasn't the right pick. Like, is that a question that's out there? Because I've seen people say it. There were times last season where I felt like he was taking penalties that you don't want to see a captain taking. Captains should lead by example kind of thing. I don't think he's been as bad this year with taking careless penalties, but again, the overall result has still been largely the same for them. Stützle last year, 75 games, 18 goals, 52 assists, 70 points. And he admitted it wasn't a good season for him. This year's been better, 18 games, 8 goals, 14 assists, 22 points. So he's on pace to shatter his scoring marks from last year. Drake Batherson last year, 82 games, 28 goals, 38 assists, 66 points. This year, he's been better. 18 games, 7 goals, 10 assists, 17 points. Claude Giroux, 82 games last year, 21 goals, 43 assists, 64 points. His scoring's dropped off a little bit this year, 18 games, 5 goals, 7 assists, 12 points. But again, with age, that does happen. Jake Sanderson. The progression with Sanderson hasn't been what I think Ottawa would want. 79 games, I should say, last year. 10 goals, 28 assists, 38 points. This year, 18 games, 1 goal, 9 assists, 10 points. And with Sanderson, it's interesting because when he signed that long-term extension, I looked at that and thought, that's worth it. I think he's a really good young defenseman, but he hasn't looked as good this season as last season. And so I think there's definitely some question marks there. Shabbat, 51 games, I should say, last year, 9 goals, 21 assists, 30 points. This year, 18 games, 1 goal, 10 assists, 11 points. I think Shabbat's been fine. I think Shabbat's probably been a little bit better than Sanderson. Not just from a points perspective, it's only 1 extra assist. I think he's played better in general than Sanderson. And then there's Norris, 50 games last year, 16 goals, 14 assists, 30 points. This year, 18 games, 8 goals, 5 assists, 13 points. So he's producing at a better rate this season than last season. And so those are the ones that I consider to be the core players. And really, in terms of core players, all of them, maybe with the exception of Sanderson, seem to be playing better. Now, one stat to take a look at is in terms of the plus minus, the difference between one defenseman and another. Jake Sanderson has been a minus 12 so far this season. Nick Jensen, a plus 12. So that is a huge difference between the two. Jensen's been quite good, I think, on the blue line, and I think the minus 12 in 18 games tells you Sanderson's had some struggles this season. Again, I think plus minus works in isolation. I think in certain cases you can look at it and go, yeah, that tells you a story. Maybe the most surprising part is that Ullmark's numbers have not been as strong as Korpisalo's were last year. Last year, Korpisalo, 890 save percentage with Ottawa. This year, Ullmark, 884. At times, Ullmark's looked quite good, but at other times, you can tell he's fighting it. I mean, it's going to be one of the reasons why Boston decided to move on from Ullmark. I mean, he was on the expiring deal. They weren't going to be able to bring him back. His cap hit was going to be too high, and they wouldn't be able to employ both Swayman and Ullmark, but it might be one of those moves that actually works for Boston because Ullmark's numbers have dropped off. I don't know that they'd be better in Boston. Korpisalo right now is sitting at a 901 save percentage, so his numbers have been better. Ullmark's numbers have not been what was expected of him, and it is troubling. But when you look at this team this year compared to last year, everything is a little bit better other than their points percentage, and that's the frustration. I think that's what we're starting to see with the team too. Last year, they had a 476 points percentage. This year, it's 472. So their points percentage has dropped. I don't think they're playing worse, though. Goals for per game last year, 3.05. This year, 3.17. Goals against per game last year, 3.43. This year, 3.22. Power play last year, 18%. This year, 26.7%. Penalty kill last year, 75.1%. This year, 77.4%. Shots per game. Last year, they were out shooting the opposition, 31.7 shots to 29.7 shots. This year, they're out shooting the opposition, 32.2 shots to 27 shots per game. So they're getting more shots. They're allowing fewer. They're getting more goals. They're allowing fewer. Their power play's better. Their penalty kill still needs some work, but it's moderately better than last year. And yet they're still sitting only 1 point ahead of where they were last year at this time. It has to be very frustrating. It has to be very difficult. Has to be frustrating for Travis Green as well. He just took over as coach. And the expectations on this team, again, not as high as for some of the others, but pretty high. So if we get into the discussion of trading a big name on this team, if the decision becomes something has to change and you got to blow something up here, then you get into the discussion of cap hits. And a lot of the young players in Ottawa are signed to long-term extensions. So Stützle leads the way at $8.35 million being his cap hit until 2031. And I'm going to say what I've said about that deal since it was signed. It's probably going to be a bargain. And I would say that with how Stützle's played so far this year, it is a bargain. Brady Tkachuk. $8.21 million cap hit for him until 2028. And for Tkachuk, I don't think there's any reason to look at him, point at him, and go, well, clearly Tkachuk's the problem. I don't see it. Norris, $7.95 million until 2030. If they were going to try to move a core piece, I could see Josh Norris being out there simply because at $7.95 million, you might find a taker. You might very well find a taker for Josh Norris. I don't know what Ottawa would ask for in return if that was a player they'd look to move. And I only say that because I can't see Stützle going anywhere. I can't see Tkachuk going anywhere. And I can't see Batherson going anywhere. But if they did make Batherson available, teams would be calling. His cap hit's $4.9 million until 2027, and he's right up around a point per game right now. So again, if you look at this team and say, well, they need help on the blue line, or maybe you need to shake things up in net, something, right? It might be a Batherson that you need to have out there in order to attract that kind of a return. Sanderson's $8.05 million cap hit until 2032. Again, and I know I'm saying again a lot. I'm trying to curb that, but it gets difficult when you get used to saying something as often as that. And it's a word as useful as again. But Sanderson, I still don't mind that cap hit, to be honest. But since it's till 2032, and they just signed him not that long ago. I can't see Sanderson going anywhere. Shabbat's at an $8 million cap hit till 2028. If they made Shabbat available, definitely teams would call. I can't see that happening either. And then you have Olmark's $8.25 million cap hit till 2029. I'll come right out and say it. The cap hit that he has, the numbers he's putting up, the fact that it's till 2029, Olmark's in Ottawa for a while. So when I see, and I've seen this a couple times lately, the idea that, well, Ottawa needs a big shakeup, that big shakeup would have to involve one of the core players, and I'm not sure that any of these core players are going to be on their way out of town. I intentionally left Pinto off, if anybody's asking, because it does feel like Shane Pinto might be one that could become available. He just signed that short-term extension with the team, does not have a long-term commitment, as some of these other players have. So maybe he's the more movable player. His cap hit's not that high either, so maybe. But again, it becomes difficult, and this is part of the reason that trades are so rare these days. Players that other teams would have interest in, Ottawa probably isn't going to want to trade, and players Ottawa might be willing to move, other teams might not have the cap space for, or they may not have the interest in. So can this turn around? Well, we're probably going to find out over the next couple of games here. They're at home tomorrow night against Vegas. That's not going to be easy, but Vegas is one of those games. They played earlier in the season where they should have at least got a point, and they didn't. And they need to start finding ways to get these points that they desperately need. On Saturday, they're at home against Vancouver. Vancouver's had their struggles at home, but Vancouver's been very good on the road. So that's not going to be an easy one either, and Vancouver's probably going to be an ornery bunch considering how that homestand went. So, buckle up if you're the Sens on that one. And then on Monday, to round out the homestand, they meet Calgary. And Calgary has shown already they're very resilient. They win games people don't expect them to. So this next 3 games, I'll say, to round out this homestand, will probably give us a good feel on which direction the Sens are headed in. Because if they don't win these next 3, they're in serious trouble, even though we're not to the end of November yet. So then they go on the road and they go to California. And as Detroit found out, California is not just 3 gimme games this year. Starts in San Jose on Wednesday the 27th. Then they go to LA on Saturday, November 30th. And then they're in Anaheim the next night, Sunday the 1st of December. And again, those are not, there's the word again, they're not easy games now. Anaheim has shown, especially over the last couple of games, I've been very impressed with how Anaheim's playing. And San Jose has been better. They've been quite a lot better, 6-3-2 in their last 11. And LA at home is pretty strong. They've kind of reversed the script a little bit this year. Last year, LA was great on the road to start the year. This year, they've been great at home. So these next 3 games, I think, will give us an idea. But after this next 6 games, if they don't start getting those results, we could then be looking at, I don't know, like they're already supposed to be coming out of this rebuild. They can't do in Arizona and tear it down and rebuild when they haven't finished rebuilding, can they? Like that's where we're at. That's where we're at now. Is the idea that, well, we're going to have to, this doesn't work, so we're going to have to tear these pieces out and do what? Like Claude Giroux's on an expiring contract, so they can rent him out at the deadline, but there isn't really anything else substantial. Adam Gaudette's on an expiring contract, but he's had a hot streak. I don't think anybody expects him to be able to continue to score like that, especially if he's traded somewhere else. I don't think he'd be expected to score like that. He's better off staying in Ottawa. So it is an interesting problem Ottawa has, where the team's been playing honestly pretty well in some of those losses. They're not getting the results. They need the results. They're watching as teams ahead of them are getting some points. They're in luck. It's not a crazy record that you need right now to make it into the playoffs in the East, but that could change. That could absolutely change, and Ottawa needs to be the team that's making that change. Go on a bit of a run. Win some games they're not supposed to, because they've definitely lost some games that they should have at least got a point in, and now we're staring down the barrel of this team maybe losing a little bit of faith in themselves. Maybe that's part of what happened in that game against Edmonton last night. It wasn't there. It wasn't there. And when a team doesn't have what you need in order to win, and they're just, it's not, you can feel it. You can watching the game, you understand that, yeah, they're not coming back. This game's, it's done. That's a problem. And so they need to figure this out as quickly as possible. And we'll see what ownership does. I don't know how patient Michael Andlauer is going to be with this. Paid good money for this team, and he has the right to demand that the product is better on the ice than what it's been lately. It is tough. It's a tough watch because again, we're seeing. I caught myself. We're watching this team stumble along. Some players playing pretty darn well on this team. So is it a depth issue? Do they need to add depth? Do they need to change the lines around? You've already fired the coach. They've already done that. It feels like Ottawa's gone through a lot of coaches since the last time they made the playoffs, and we're still here. We're still dealing with this. So let me know your thoughts. If you're a Sens fan, do you feel like it's just Groundhog Day and it's bound and it's going to happen that they're going to end up outside the playoffs? Or do you think, you know what, they're better than their record and they're going to turn it around? Because if you look at the overall numbers, I think you can make the argument that they're better than their record. Are they a playoff team? I don't know if I'd go that far necessarily, but I do think they can be better than what they've been. And they have all the pieces needed to win. And this is where that trick comes in, where you can get all those young pieces, all those young players with all that potential. It does not necessarily mean you're going to have a playoff team on the ice. So it is a tough job being an NHL GM. We think it's easy because we can just online just move guys around. See, look at that. Look at that. I built a great team there. It's great. Yeah, the cap hit will be 145 million, but I'll throw a couple guys on LTIR. It'll be fine. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Is your faith shaken in the Sens if you believe they were going to make the playoffs this year, or do you think no, they will make the playoffs? Olmark will start getting his numbers up and everything will be fine. Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. As always, I will talk to you again soon.